I was still hooked up to IVs when I made the call. My hands were shaking. My body felt empty, number. But I needed my mom. I needed to hear her voice, to feel like someone in my world still made sense. I dialed her from the hospital bed. 1 ring, 2. She picked up, her voice cheerful. "Hey, sweetie, everything okay?" I couldn't even answer right away. My throat tightened. It took everything I had just to get the words out. "I lost the baby," I said. "Mom, I lost her." There was a pause. Then her voice softened, but not the way I expected. "Oh no. Honey, I'm so sorry, but can I call you back? We're in the middle of your sister's gender reveal. The balloons are about to go up." I blinked at the ceiling. I thought I misheard her. I was lying in a hospital gown, my baby gone, and my mom was talking about party balloons. "Wait, what?" I asked. "You know we've been planning this for weeks. Marissa's big reveal is today. The whole family's here. We're about to pop the confetti. I'll call you back later, okay? Love you." She hung up. Just like that. I stared at the screen until it went black. No tears came at first. I was beyond tears. I felt like I was falling through a hole in the world, and no one even noticed. That was the moment I realized how alone I really was. Micah walked in a few seconds later with a plastic cup of water and a pack of crackers. He saw my face and froze. "What happened?" he asked, already knowing it wasn't good. "They're at the gender reveal," I whispered. He sat on the edge of the bed and took the phone from my hands. He didn't say anything, just held me while I crumbled in his arms. "My name is Kaylin. I'm 29. I was 18 weeks pregnant with my first child, a little girl we named Lila. I'd painted the nursery pale green, folded tiny clothes into drawers, read parenting books before bed. I'd done everything right, and in one weekend, I lost my baby, and then I lost the illusion that my family would be there for me. You think you know how people will respond when you're broken. You imagine the phone calls, the flowers, the way your mom will cradle your face and say, 'Come home, we've got you.' But what do you do when their reality doesn't stop for your heartbreak, when they choose celebration over your devastation?" 2 weeks later, my parents texted me, asking if they could have the nursery items I'd bought. They said Marissa would make good use of them. Micah and I gave them a box, a beautiful one, wrapped like a gift. But inside, it wasn't diapers or onesies. It was the truth. And when they opened it, they couldn't even speak. Before everything fell apart, I was the kind of person who believed in the little things. I believed that a warm cup of tea could soothe a storm, that handwritten notes mattered, that family showed up when it counted. When I found out I was pregnant, it felt like the final piece of a life I'd been quietly building with Micah. We'd been married for 3 years. We had a quiet rhythm between us. Mornings spent brushing our teeth side by side, nights with our legs tangled under the covers, plans whispered under shared breath. Starting a family was the next step we were ready for, and when that test turned positive, I cried in the bathroom while Micah hugged me and laughed with that full-body joy he's always carried so effortlessly. We named her Lila almost immediately. I don't know why that name stuck, but it did. It felt soft and brave at the same time. We didn't tell many people. We wanted to keep it ours for a while. Just Micah and me and Lila, a name that made her real before she ever had a heartbeat strong enough to hear. My parents, Celia and Robert, were happy when we told them. At least, they sounded happy. My mom congratulated me with a polished kind of excitement, the kind that feels like it was written on a Hallmark card. My dad said, "That's wonderful, honey," but quickly pivoted to asking about my sister, Marissa's latest ultrasound. She'd found out she was pregnant only 6 weeks after I did. It was her first, too. Suddenly, everything was about Marissa. She was glowing. She was radiant. She was carrying the first grandson, even though they didn't know the sex yet. My mom was in full event planning mode. Pinterest boards, matching tablecloths, signature mocktails. I tried to be supportive. I really did. I helped make party favors. I ordered a balloon art. I clapped when Marissa announced the date of her gender reveal like I didn't feel myself disappearing in the background of my own pregnancy. Micah noticed. He always notices. One night, while we folded baby clothes, he looked over at me and said, "You know you don't have to keep trying to earn their excitement, right? This baby already matters." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. Not entirely. I thought if I just kept showing up, if I stayed kind and helpful, my parents would eventually turn their eyes toward me too. That one day they'd stop seeing me as the capable one who doesn't need much and start seeing me as someone who still longs for their warmth. Then came the night I started bleeding. It was like a slow panic. I kept trying to tell myself it was nothing, that I'd read stories about this happening and the babies turned out fine. But somewhere deep in my bones, I knew. The hospital smelled like bleach and despair. The ultrasound tech didn't say a word, just frowned at the screen. A doctor I'd never met came in and told me, with perfect detachment, that there was no heartbeat. My body was no longer a cradle. It was a tomb. I remember the silence between his words. I remember Micah squeezing my hand so tightly I could feel his knuckles dig into my skin. I remember the nurse placing her hand on my shoulder and saying, "I'm so sorry for your loss," like it had already been decided, like it was past tense before I had time to even process it. Micah stayed with me through the night. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to explain it or fix it. He just held me like he could carry the weight for both of us if I needed him to. I think part of me believed that maybe, just maybe, my parents would come the next morning, that they'd walk into that hospital room and wrap me in the kind of love I hadn't felt since I was a child. That hope made me pick up the phone. That hope made me dial their number, even as my voice shook and my heart begged me not to. That hope is what shattered when my mother told me they were too busy preparing for pink or blue balloons to be with me. And in that moment, something in me cracked. Not just from the loss of my daughter, but from the quiet, suffocating realization that I didn't matter enough for them to set their joy aside for my grief. After I hung up the phone, I didn't cry right away. I stared at the hospital wall like if I looked long enough, it would open up and swallow me. The nurse came in to check my vitals, and I nodded when she asked if I was okay, even though I felt like something inside me had gone hollow. Micah was next to me, sitting in the plastic chair he had barely left all night. He had a sandwich in his hand, something from the vending machine downstairs. But when he saw my face, he dropped it onto the side table and moved toward me. "What happened?" he asked, crouching by my bed. "What did they say?" Couldn't answer at first. My throat burned. When the words finally came out, they sounded flat. "They're busy. Marissa's gender reveal is today. They're helping set up." Micah stared at me for a second, waiting for the punchline. When he realized I wasn't joking, his mouth tightened. "They what?" "They said they'd pray for me," I added, "and that they'd call later." He stood up and paced once, the way he does when he's trying not to say something sharp. I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything, because the truth was I didn't want him to calm down. I wanted someone to be as angry as I felt. They couldn't take 10 minutes to speak to you. You're lying in a hospital bed after losing your baby and they're blowing up balloons. I looked down at my hands, pale against the white sheet. I couldn't even defend them. I had tried for so long to believe they cared, that I was just misreading things. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. We went home the next day. I didn't hear from my parents. Not that night, not the next morning, not even a text. The gender reveal photos started popping up online. Marisa beaming in a pink dress, my mother smiling proudly behind her. It was a girl. Everyone was celebrating. I turned off my phone. I spent the next week trying to keep my head above water. Grief is a strange kind of quiet. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits with you in silence, pulling at your skin from the inside. I kept thinking about the tiny socks I had folded into the nursery drawers, the lullaby playlist I had made for her, the books we would never read together. Micah stayed close. He cooked meals I didn't eat and talked about things I couldn't hear. He didn't push me. He just existed beside me, a constant in a world that felt like it had slipped out of orbit. 10 days after the hospital, I got a text from my mother. It read, "Hi, Kaylin. We were wondering if you still had the nursery things. Marissa's starting to set up her baby room, and we thought she could use them since you're not going to need them." I read it 3 times. Each time it hurt more. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Cold. Practical. Like what I had gone through was an inconvenience they were hoping to tidy up. My daughter had been reduced to a hand-me-down opportunity. I showed the message to Micah. He didn't say anything at first. Then he looked up from the phone and said, "We should give them a box. Just not the kind they're expecting." His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it. Not anger, not revenge. Something deeper, something protective. "What do you mean?" I asked. "They want something from you without acknowledging what they took. Let's give them something that makes them stop and see it, really see it." I sat with his words for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to delete it and pretend it never existed, but another part of me was done pretending. I had stayed quiet my whole life, careful not to upset the balance, but there was no balance left, just weight I had carried alone for too long. That night, I sat in Lila's unfinished nursery and pulled out a box. Not the kind they asked for, not filled with pacifiers and blankets, but something else. Something that would speak louder than I ever had. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. I wanted them to know my daughter's name. The nursery was still untouched. Lila's things were exactly where I'd left them before the hospital. Tiny clothes folded neatly, stuffed animals lined along the windowsill, a mobile above the crib that played a melody I hadn't been able to hear since I came home. I sat on the floor with the box in front of me. My hands hovered over it like it was sacred. It wasn't a gift. It was a statement. Micah was quiet in the doorway. He watched me for a moment, then stepped inside and sat beside me, his knee brushing mine. "You don't have to do this," he said gently, "if it's too much." I shook my head. "I do. I really do." It wasn't about punishing them. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about the fact that I had spent the last few weeks feeling like a ghost in my own story, like my daughter had existed only in the shadows of someone else's celebration. I needed them to see her, to feel what I felt, even for just a second. We started with the hospital bracelet, mine and Lila's. I had kept it in the nightstand, folded in tissue paper. I placed it carefully in the bottom of the box. Then came the socks, white, with tiny yellow ducks. I had bought them during my second trimester on a day when I was finally starting to feel like everything was going to be okay. I placed them on top of the bracelet, my fingers lingering there. I added a framed copy of the last ultrasound. Her profile was clear in it. Her little nose, her curled fingers. It was the image I had stared at on the way home from the appointment, smiling at the life growing inside me. Then came the letter. I had rewritten it 3 times. Each version said something different, but the one I kept was simple. Her name was Lila. She was wanted. She was loved. She mattered. You didn't ask about her. You didn't come for me. You chose a party. This box is all you'll get from me. Not because I'm bitter, because I'm done pretending I wasn't broken when you looked the other way. I signed it and placed it at the top. Micah closed the lid and wrapped the box in neutral paper. No bows, no decoration, just clean edges and quiet weight. We didn't say much the rest of the night. There was nothing left to say. Everything I had carried was now inside that box. The grief, the anger, the silence. All of it wrapped up into something I could hand off and finally let go of. The next morning, we drove to my parents' house. I hadn't been there since the pregnancy announcement. Back then, they had hugged me. My mother had said she hoped the baby had my eyes. My dad had offered to repaint the guest room if we ever needed help. All of it had felt so real. Now, walking up the steps with that box in my hands, it felt like I was returning to strangers. No one was expecting us. I didn't want them to be. Micah rang the bell. After a few moments, my mother opened the door, surprised. "Kaylin, Micah, we weren't expecting—" I handed her the box. "These are the nursery items you asked for." She blinked, looking down. "Oh, thank you. I know Marisa will appreciate—" I didn't wait for her to finish. I turned and walked away. Micah followed, silent. As we reached the car, I looked back once. My mother had stepped inside. The box was still in her hands. I didn't know how long it would take for them to open it. I didn't care. This wasn't about their reaction. It was about mine. It was the first time I had chosen myself over their comfort. The first time I had spoken loudly without raising my voice. I didn't leave anything behind in that house but a box full of truth. For once, they would have to sit with it, and I didn't need to be there to watch. We didn't speak much on the drive home. Micah kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other on my knee. I stared out the window, not at anything specific, just breathing through the heaviness that came from finally doing what I had avoided for years, setting a boundary with my family and meaning it. For 2 days, there was silence. No messages, no calls, no acknowledgement. I started to wonder if they had even opened the box or if it was sitting untouched in a corner, waiting for someone else to deal with it. But then, on the 3rd day, my father called. It wasn't my mother. That alone told me something had shifted. I let it ring twice before answering. Micah was next to me on the couch, watching a documentary we weren't really paying attention to. When he saw the caller ID, he paused the screen and met my eyes. I picked up. "Hi, Dad." There was a long breath on the other end. Not dramatic, just uncertain. "Kaylin," he said. His voice was softer than I remembered. We opened the box. I said nothing. I wanted him to fill the space this time. I wasn't going to do it for him. "I didn't know her name," he continued. "Lila. That's a beautiful name." "She was beautiful," I said. There was another pause. "I don't know what to say. I'm not looking for anything," I told him. "Not anymore." He went quiet again. Then, "Your mother cried when she saw the socks." That hit me harder than I expected. I had imagined them reading the letter. I had imagined the silence. But I hadn't imagined tears. Not from her. "She said she didn't know you were hurting that deeply," he added. I kept my voice steady. "She did. She just didn't want to deal with it." He didn't argue. That surprised me. I think, for once, he knew there was no way to spin it. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "We both are." I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't. I didn't say thank you, because I wasn't grateful for this moment. I was exhausted by the fact that it had taken this much to get here. "I needed you to see her," I said instead. Not just as something sad that happened to me, as someone who was real, who existed. He cleared his throat, and for a second I thought he might cry, but he didn't. He just said, "We're going to leave the nursery things here. They belong to her." That was the first thing he got right. When I hung up, I sat still for a moment, not shaking, not broken, just still. Micah leaned into me. "What did he say?" I looked over at him. "They opened it." He waited. "They cried." Micah exhaled and pulled me in close. I rested my head on his shoulder and let myself feel the quiet peace of a moment I hadn't known I needed. They had opened the box. They had seen her name. And for once, they didn't speak over the silence. They sat in it. That night, I walked back into the nursery. The air felt lighter, like the grief had shifted just slightly. Not gone, but clearer. Less tangled in guilt and what-ifs. I took the frame out of the drawer. The same ultrasound that was now burned into my parents' memory sat in another copy on my dresser. I placed it on the shelf above the crib, next to a candle and a photo of me and Micah on the day we found out we were pregnant. I whispered her name. Not like a goodbye, but like a promise. Lila. She would never be forgotten. Not by me. Not by Micah. And now, not by the people who had tried to move past her without looking her in the eye. Some stories don't end with justice, they end with truth. And that was enough. It didn't fix anything. That's what I realized first. There was no grand apology from my mother. No healing family dinner where we all sat down and finally talked through decades of silence. No emotional reunion. Just space. And in that space, I found something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. A few days after my father's call, I received a message from my sister. It was short. "I didn't know what happened until they opened the box. I'm sorry." I didn't answer her. Maybe someday I will, but not yet, because sorry doesn't change the fact that while I was bleeding alone in a hospital bed, she was popping pink confetti into the sky. I don't blame her for being happy. I blame her for pretending not to notice when I disappeared. Grief makes people uncomfortable. It breaks the rhythm of what's easy. Most people don't want to sit with you in your sorrow. They want you to get over it. Smile through it. Be polite while your world falls apart. I've spent most of my life trying to protect other people from my feelings. I thought if I stayed easy to love, I'd always be included. But love, that depends on your silence, isn't love. It's convenience. Micah never asked me to be quiet. Not once. He didn't expect me to bounce back or hide the tears or explain the moments I couldn't get out of bed. He just stayed. He listened when I wanted to speak and sat beside me when I couldn't. I didn't fully understand what it meant to be loved until I watched him hold grief like it was sacred, not shameful. In the weeks that followed, I didn't donate the nursery items. I didn't pack them away. I kept them exactly where they were. Because that room wasn't a failure. It was a memory, a part of Lila's story and mine. I bought a small nameplate and placed it above the crib, just her name, in soft gold letters. Lila Grace. Saying her name out loud doesn't hurt the way it used to. Now it feels like honoring her, like claiming the space she left behind. She existed. She changed me. And just because I don't get to raise her doesn't mean I stop being her mother. There are still days I wake up and forget for a moment. That split second before memory rushes in and reminds me what was lost. And there are other days when I feel light again, when I can laugh without guilt, when I can sit in the nursery and feel calm. I've learned that healing isn't about replacing grief with happiness. It's about learning to carry both, about accepting that some stories won't have the ending you wanted, but they still matter. They still deserve to be told. I don't know what kind of relationship I'll have with my parents going forward. Right now, I'm not chasing one. I'm not trying to earn their presence or their understanding. They showed me who they were when I needed them most, and that truth matters more than shared DNA or old habits. Micah and I still talk about trying again someday. Not today. Not soon. But when we're ready. And when we do, it won't be to replace Lila. It will be to honor what she taught us. That love is not about noise or performance. It's about presence, about being there when it's hardest, about holding space for pain and joy to exist side by side. If you're watching this and you've lost something, someone, and the people you expected to hold you didn't, I want you to hear this. Your grief is not inconvenient. It is not a burden, and you are allowed to speak your truth, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. You are allowed to ask to be seen, and if they still turn away, you are allowed to walk forward anyway. I carried Lila in my body for 4.5 months. I carry her in my heart every day. She lived. She mattered. And now, so do I. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt overlooked in your pain or had to find your voice in the middle of heartbreak, you're not alone. Grief changes everything, but it also shows you what matters, who matters, and who never really saw you in the first place. If you connected with this story, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and comment below. I read everyone. Whether you've walked through something similar or just want to say Lila's name with me, your words matter more than you know. And if you want more real stories about love, loss, growth, and the moments that change us, subscribe to the channel. This space is for all of us learning how to speak our truth. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for helping me keep Lila's name alive.